Well, today we're going to be talking about BIDs, and BID stands for Business Improvement District. And there are a lot of BIDs. You probably, if you live in the UK, probably have one or had one in your city and or town. I know there's one in Leeds. There used to be one in Sheffield. If you walk past the Peace Gardens, as you look past towards the theatres, you can still see all the signage up and around where its offices used to be. There's one in Huddersfield. There used to be one in Barnsley, not anymore. Though it's been a long time since there's been one in Barnsley. But what do these bids actually do? Well, the whole idea and purpose was around regeneration. That these were going to help improve these sort of old, town centers and sort of bring them more up to date and improve them and make them good centers for business improvement and development. Now, have these bids actually worked? That's a complicated question because there are some success stories. There are a lot of ones that are just went meh. Like the Sheffield one was infamous for being just meh. The one in Huddersfield does seem to do okay in a way, although you will hear different things from different people when they refer to it. But today we're going to talk about the bad type of bid because I think it is worth bringing up and highlighting when a bid is actually quite bad. And in this case, this is the seaside town of Clevedon, basically with local shop owners complaining it is an absolute waste of money. They've meant to have done all these improvements, but we cannot see any development, any improvement to this area that it is sort of meant to have brought. So I think it is well worth going over what a bad one looks like. That way, if you've got one in your hometown or city where you are, then you sort of know what to expect. Although sometimes it can be quite hard. Not all bids are the same. It can depend massively who is running them, how much investment they get. There's a number of different factors at play. But today we're going to have a look at this one, and before we do go into that, please do remember to click on the like, the share button, the subscribe button if you are new. Down below there is the link to the Patreon page, the one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course as always the Pony Club as well. And of course it is Wednesday, so do remember to check out the Pony Club if you are on the Patreon or the again YouTube subscription down below. The Pony Club, you can view that as well. So on we go today on to cover this. So, it's torn the town apart. Seaside shops rebel over waste of money improvements levy. So, business owners in Clevedon, a Somerset seaside town famous for its pier and independent shops, have now split into two fiercely opposed camps in recent years. So, this is the type of stuff that this has actually caused, but it's kind of strange that it's caused such a drastic split in the town. So there are those for and against and the ins and outs. So what is the big divide? Clevedon's Business Improvement District, introduced back in 2018 and renewed for another 5 years just last summer. It has torn the town apart. People who were now once friendly will now no longer speak. It's a nightmare, says Daniel Adams, the former owner, owner, shall we say, of Stationery House, one of several businesses refusing to pay the bid levy. As more than 300 now similar zones across the UK, business within the designated area of Clevedon must pay a yearly charge to the bid, a private limited company, with the money going to improvements to boost businesses in the area. But dozens of firms have joined the No to Clevedon bid campaign, and tensions have now risen, and arguments have now broken out in meetings, and some businesses are just preparing to go to court over paying the levy. A lot of people do not want to put their their head above the parapet, says Adams, but there needs to be an alternative narrative that if you are going into something which is going to be financial, which you're going to have to financially commit to for the next 5 years, you need all the information. Laura Parkin, owner of Ziggy's gift shop, says that she initially supported the bid, but changed her mind when she started to struggle to find out where her money was actually going. There isn't enough information out there to make a decision. It has divided the traders. I've heard people say, oh no, I won't use that shop because they are anti bid. Yeah, it's sad. So, this is it. And it is money that obviously a lot of shop owners do sort of have to put into a levy. There are numbers, again, why your bid probably doesn't exist because it probably closed because it didn't re-win its sort of right to sort of keep on claiming that. There are some bids that are very, very bad, very sort of, as you can see here, don't really know what actually the bid has done. It's very murky. Even though they are sort of meant to be using sort of, public funds, there should be sort of open and transparency. This is one of the bad things about all bids, not just this one here, that they can be so sort of murky. So it is kind of hard, as we said at the beginning, to sort of work out how much of improvement they actually have. It is kind of difficult to find that stuff out. So back to it. So many, of course, businesses in the town are actually happy when what the bid has achieved. With one person saying, I've had my shop for over 20 years, and for me, bid is brilliant because it means that we've got a pot of money to do things with, says Amy Barnett, who runs the chocolate shop Indulgence. Everyone can chat about what the money is spent on, and that means that we have things that have actually got done. It brings everyone together to work for the greater good. She points to the benefits of such extras as having extra signs, funds for the new player area, and a new website to promote the town. She says a nasty campaign has now sprung up in opposition to the bid, making bullious accusations. Unfortunately, those people aren't really offering any alternative solutions. Doesn't surprise me, but there you go. Just a few doors down, Alistair Sims, the manager of the Books on the Hill, agrees that the bid has been a bigger force for good than bad. Without having that central voice, we can't do as much as we want to. I think it's really helpful, he says. If it's voted in, then of course everyone is expected to pay for it. We have a sense of duty. There's really no need for such division. Others feel that they have very little return for their money. I thought the bid originally was a good idea, says Gary Sell, who ran the Salt House Bar at the seafront for over 18 years. But I've been paying at least over £160,000 a year for 5 years for nothing. The flower beds around here haven't been touched. The seafront has had nothing. We won't be paying until we feel that the bid is going to offer value. And that is one of the big problems. Sometimes some of these things that these bids do, not overly visible. And that's why you have such, I think, here in this case, as you can see, a very divisive split between people who are like, well, we do agree, we don't agree. It's not unusual to see shopkeepers and people who own businesses in town centers in these areas be so divided over this, especially when Barnes used to have one. That was very, very much the case. A lot of people felt that they didn't get any benefit, that they weren't paying for anything. So it's gone. Same for Sheffield. But although Sheffield went because of the merger of the South Yorkshire City region, but there are a lot of people I think were very happy to see the Sheffield one go. But back to it. So Clevedon bid obviously rebuts the claim that it has not invested in the seafront, referring to the park run it helped introduce there over 4 years ago. So they do stuff like this. It is not just businesses. Huddersfield bid was a big point in getting a big sort of geek festival up and off the ground. They've done a lot about to try and introduce like food and festivals and activities in Huddersfield town centre. They don't just focus on business stuff like that. So them setting up the park run and things like that, that's another thing that these bids can do. So back to it. So Carlisle was very particularly critical of the way that the North Somerset Council was allowed to vote on the ballot to decide on creating the bid. Last year, 141 votes were cast, with 8 in favour. The councils had 6 votes, 1 for its headquarters, 3 for car parks, and 1 for the Children's Community Centre, and 1 for a library. The council offices are one of the Clevedon's largest buildings with a rateable value of more than 100 million, making about a third of the rateable value of all the businesses which voted in favour of the bid. The ballot is won not just on votes cast, but on the relatable values of the businesses voting. So obviously, as you can see, that's not overly fair. I agree with that. It's not overly fair that that happens, but unfortunately, it was how it was set up. And of course, in this case, the council has the biggest say whether this continues or not. So without the council votes, there would be no bid because not enough businesses would vote for it, said Adams. Councils love bids because then they don't have to spend have to spend things on things like hanging baskets, festivals, and street cleaning. North Somerset Council did acknowledge that the outcome would have been different if council properties had been excluded, but says we are entitled to vote and choose to do so. Adams says that businesses are now doubly angry. The council gets a 50% discount on the levy because the building is just outside the town centre. After the ballot in last July, which saw the bid renewed for 5 years, the No campaign appealed to Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, arguing that it was unlawful because of the council officers' inclusion and the discount. The appeal was unsuccessful. And again, I do agree with the No campaign on that bid because it is unfair that they don't have to pay the full bid, that they do get the discount, and then they get a larger share of what goes on. Um, Unfortunately, this is just the way that most of these bids have been set up. Um, and this is something that, again, Michael Gove should be sort of, in and maybe looking into. But of course, he's not really interested, just as many ministers aren't interested here. But there you go. So George Grace, the chair of Clevedon Bid, says that businesses are free to vote against it, but asks what would replace the services that it provides. Councils can barely pay for children's and others essential services. So while there are fine words about saving the high street and building community, there is almost no council resource to do any of it. Again, makes a good point. He's right in that regard. In Clevedon, the average weekly cost for the independent businesses to be part of the bid is the price of a cup of coffee, so it's hardly going to break the bank. He says that businesses are now best placed to bring the change to the towns. That in Clevedon, people say that they do get a sense that someone is now caring for the place. Most simply put, businesses know that bids do work and that there are no real alternatives. North Somerset Council spokesperson said, we do think that bid activities significantly do benefit Clevedon's retail and hospitality sectors, and we do have seen a positive effect on residents who use the town public areas. So will that be successful? Will we see other bids going through the same? I would not be surprised if there are other revolts like this against bids. I know that it does happen. I know that not everyone is happy with their local bids, but as was a fair point here, what's the alternative? If you get rid of the bid, sometimes a lot of stuff suddenly goes away that goes back to councils, and then they don't have the money to now pay for all the extra stuff that's happening. So it is a difficult decision. Like, where do you go? What is the proper alternative here? If you are going to sort of change these things, just handing it back to the council maybe is not going to be the best alternative. And that, if you are going to sort of get rid of the bid, what do you replace it with? How do you sort of improve these things? But this is something that should be looked at and certainly changed if they are, doing bad and good. I think, businesses should have a more say. After all, they are probably the ones most paying for it in a lot of these cases. They should have a lot more say. Even though these do have independent boards that, businesses can sit on, very often the council, of course, will have a seat in there as well. It's difficult. It's difficult. But I think you will get, and I wouldn't be surprised if most people don't even realize there's a bid in their town centre. But I can guarantee you there may very well be one, or you even had one and you didn't even know it existed. But that's just unfortunately the way that some of these go sometimes. I think it has been a sort of good attempt to generally sort of improve some of these areas, but unfortunately, some haven't worked out. Some have been successful. Some, maybe haven't sung about their successes, about how successful they have been. But there you go. So let me know what you think. I'd be very interested to know if you have a bid in your town centre. What do you think about it? Be very interested to know. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.